Here's my cup, one of those ones I put a flat bottom on in a previous video. Now I'm going to go ahead and put a handle on it and pull it off the side. So I've got to start by getting some clay. And it's just right out of the bag. It's still pretty soft. And I'm just going to go ahead and add a little bit of water in my hands to just really get it even softer. A lot of times if handles want to crack as you're trying to bend them, it's because the clay's too dry. So I have to think about how many fingers is gonna take to hold this. One's probably it's a little too big for that. Two or three might be better. Handle position's important. Whether it's in the middle, on top, bottom, different things. Middle is gonna be best. We don't want it to come off the form too far. So with the side of this, I'm basically breaking this up into thirds. A bottom third, middle third, and top third. And that middle third, having the top of my handle there and the bottom of it there, is going to make for a really good balance. And so this is a little hard clay, so I'm going to add some water just to kind of bring some life into this so that it connects really well. And then I'm going to score both those sections really heavily, and I'm dipping my rib in water as well, so just try and, again, hydrate this as much as possible. Because again, if the clay is dry, I'm going to add wet clay to this, so if the wet to dries off, it's going to want to crack off. So there's my clay. I'm going to start rolling this out to start my shape. And as I'm about to show you, there we go. All that rolling is just happening right in the center of that big coil so that I get this shape that has a thicker mass on the two ends, almost like a bone shape or something like that. So I'm just going to roll right in the middle and then just flatten one side. And this side that I'm flattening, that's going to end up being the inside of my handle. And that's what's going to be really comfortable to rest my finger against as I'm picking something up. If it's too rounded or jagged, it won't be comfortable. And I'm going to cut this at about, we're going to say, 45-degree angle. And that's where it's so it can come off the side of my mug at an angle, an upward angle. We want our handles to have a lot of lift to them, a lot of life to them. If our handles come off straight or even slope down, they can have a tendency to get a little bit dumpy. And so we want to, have an upward arc, an upward transition before we start curving down. And so my cup, outside of my cup is rounded, so I just kind of tap on that with my thumb to give it a little bit of a curve. If maybe the side of my mug had straight walls, I wouldn't do that. And so again, I'm just going to refreshen the water on that, and then start squishing my handle on. If you can see, I'm pressing really firmly. I've got my hand on the inside to support that clay, and I'm also kind of jiggling and squishing and pressing down on the edges to make sure that's a really tight connection. And all of that will get cleaned up later. Kind of like with anything in clay, when it's really soft like this, it can be really hard to clean up. So I'm just really trying to just get a good connection so that this doesn't pull off as I'm trying to take it off. And right now, at this point, that joint is really fragile. So I want to make sure that I'm always supporting the handle and keeping it perpendicular with the ground. Right now, it's kind of got a mass to it, a thickness to it, and I'm just pinching the edges so that there is a taper. The thickest point needs to be in the middle, and then the edges need to taper down to a thinness, to a crispness. So that the handle is more comfortable, it also isn't quite as blocky. So again, I'm about to start pulling this, and I'm going to make sure that, again, my handle is always perpendicular to the ground. The angle of the mug I'm not as concerned about, but once that handle moves away from perpendicular to the ground or table, it's going to want to crack and break. And so now just very gently, clay kind of has to be warmed up, so to speak. I don't want to just start pulling on this as hard as I can. It can want to crack and break if I do that. So just a very light, gentle motion from the base of the handle where it connects to the mug down to the end. I'm using the flat spot of my thumb, mostly on what's going to be the inside of the handle, so that again, there's kind of a flatter side there, and then my fingers offer a little curve shape for the outside to give it just a little bit more pleasing look. And I'm trying to make sure that I'm stretching evenly and straightly, and so that that clay kind of stretches again evenly, but also kind of trying to make sure that at the attachment area isn't getting too thick. There at the base of the connection. If it gets too thick right there, you're not going to have a very good bend, or it's just going to crack instead of bend, or maybe it'll crack later. So I've dried my hand off, which is really important at this point. I'm again just going to kind of force that handle back a little bit more, and now just gently bend it to where that bottom connection is. And as you can see with this one, I've just got way too much clay down at the bottom, so I'm going to cut some of that off. There should be some balance between the amount of clay at the top of the handle and at the base of the handle. Those should be your thickest points, and then it should taper out into a thinness where you're actually going to be holding on to this. If it gets too thick inside of the handle, it's just going to be very unpleasant to hold. And I can just use my finger on the inside with a little bit of moisture on it, just to go ahead and open up that handle. Again, thinking about, if I want to position this for 1 finger, 2 fingers, 3 fingers, 4 fingers. Sometimes people like to slide their hands around cupping it. But we want to think about just a nice, again, kind of upward trajectory to that curve. So we're going to put that one down and go ahead and start on another one. Just grabbing a little bit of clay, again, freshening it up with some water. I'm just going to roll that one out. Again, just focusing on rolling kind of a thick coil, just rolling right in the middle and then smacking it down. And this is another way I can start defining the edge of that handle. I just sort of pinched it down. As you can see, there's kind of a spine up the middle now. It's a little bumpy and rough looking right now, but the pulling process takes care of that. And again, I'm going to cut this one a little bit shorter. I don't need quite as much clay. And here we go. And so this one, again, I'm going to put a little bit of moisture down before I start scoring in both areas, the top and bottom connection. And then I'll go ahead and score it with a rib. And you could use a fork or a needle tool, what have you. I just prefer the serrated rib. And again, I'm going to indent that curved a little bit, add a little moisture, add a little ribbing or scoring with a rib, and start squeezing it on. And again, it's really important when you do this. Again, I'm trying to keep the handle secure, but I'm also with my left hand on the inside, or sometimes my right hand on the inside, making sure to push out from the inside to, again, really reinforce that connection point. And again, at this point, I'm supporting the handle. Now, again, I'm tapering those edges, pinching it out so that there's less clay to try and manipulate as I'm pulling it. And now I'm just going to try and compress that connection a little bit on the bottom there. So here we go. Again, just pulling straight down. We want to try a nice even pressure the entire time. But these first couple pulls, again, I'm just trying to reorientate the clay, kind of compress it downwards. It's not necessarily going to want to pull very easily. So you kind of have to, just kind of ease into it. And just as you can feel the clay start to loosen up, and just start pulling a little bit more firmly to stretch that clay out. And again, making sure that connection point stays thick where it's connected, but then tapering the clay away from that so I can get a nice bend. I've dried off my hands, and again, just articulating that a little bit out of camera. I don't know why no one can see this, but believe me, it's good. There we go. Just making that connection towards the bottom. And this one, the excess clay on the bottom is not too bad. That could be pretty reasonable if you like that sort of thing. I don't care for it, so I'm going to go ahead and cut that off. And again, just pressing firmly into that scoring, and again, my hands supporting on the inside. And now I can open this up with a little bit of moisture on a finger. And that'll be good for a good 2 or 3 fingers, depending on your size of hand. So I'm just adjusting that to make sure it's nice and even. And again, you can press up from the inside to give that arch a little bit more height to it, a nice curve. And so I'm going to have to clean up that inside. And so now, about an hour later, it's time to readdress some of these things. And so I'm getting closer to, I'm not quite to leather hard yet with that handle. You can tell there's still a little bit of sheen to it, but it's lost a lot of that jiggle. And so I need to backfill this section of the handle. As you can tell, it looks really incomplete for how well everything else is connected. So I've added some water, and I've added some scoring with my needle tool. And I'm basically just trying to fill this in with clay. And I just need a real small amount for this. I'm just going to make a little bit of a coil in my hand. And one side of that I'm going to pinch off so that there's a thick side and a thin side. In that thin side, the goal of that is that it will fit nice and snugly inside of that little crevice from the bottom of the handle. If we just try and stick a thick coil in there, it's just going to end up causing it to crack later. And then this is just going to be a really nice way to just make sure that that compression is just really nice. And now I'm just going to work the clay into the mug and to the handle with my finger there. Again, I don't want to leave that unfinished. And I'm also supporting the handle with my thumb. Because like I said, it's not totally leather hard, so I don't want it to flex and bend. And you're about to see, yeah, there's a little plug of clay I need to fill that gap that I didn't have enough for. Now I'm just going to add a little bit to the other side too. And again, just compress those really well so that, again, this handle doesn't want to crack. But I'm also thinking about, again, those two connection points really need to have a similar visual weight to them. The top one's got a good mass to it, so the bottom should have a similar sort of mass to it. And now I'm looking for something. I don't remember what, but it's going to be good. Just get excited. There it is. Nice wooden knife tool. And I can use this to go in and articulate the connection points for this handle. So you can go in with something like a wooden knife and really kind of separate the handle from the mug, or you can just kind of compress those seams in and blend them in like they're all one piece, like you'll see with the next mug. And so I'm just working my way around both of these handles, getting rid of the clay boogers that manifest themselves from the process of it. And you can see again, there's still a little bit of mess that I need to clean up, and that's what I'm doing now. I can just very gently with my thumb just sort of start smearing and compressing that extra clay away. Got a sponge. Terrible idea for cleaning this up. Sponges are just going to remove all those fine particles of clay. So if you've ever sponged your clay too much or find your clay to get really gritty, that's because of the sponge. So I'm just using a really soft paintbrush with some water on it to just brush into those areas to really compress those lines that I've made and just really help me clean up those areas in a soft way that I can't really get to with a finger. And then some of that, if it's still a little bit too sharp or a little bit too messy, I can just roll over that with my finger. Just softening things. Handle you want to be approachable, you want to be usable. So just softening up all those connections is really important. And at this point, this one's pretty much done. I would just need to put my name on it. It looks like I'm going to compress those marks a little bit. There we go. Make sure that's nice and tight inside of there. Cohesive. And I can pretty much just let this dry. My cups or my mug body is really leather hard. My handle's still a little bit wet. So it'd be best to dry that underneath some plastic. And so now with this handle, I'm going to go ahead and just, again, backfill this interior part of the handle. Make it stronger, make it more complete looking. A little water, a little scoring, a little bit more clay. And again, I'm going to taper the edge of that coil so that it fits really tightly inside of that seam. There we go. And again, as you see, as I'm doing this and I'm pushing this in on the inside, I'm making really sure to support the outside of the handle so that it doesn't want to pop off or flex or break or anything like that. It's one of those moments of memory with clay where you might not see something happen from not supporting this, but most likely it would crack or break later if you didn't support it. So again, with this one, I've decided to, just totally compress this handle in, just so it looks like smooth transitions from the mug body to the handle. So that's what I'm just kind of working my way around the outside. Before I drew in a separation with that wooden knife tool, and now I'm just trying to keep it all, it's kind of like one object. And you could probably, if you had a small enough rib or Maybe the edge of a wooden knife tool. You could use this as well. Use a tool like that as well. But I find just using my fingers is easy enough. And again, you've noticed I'm not using a lot of water at this point. I might have to just moisten things here and there, but adding too much water can start making your clay want to crack. And so again, like I said, I want to make this a real good overall smooth transition. So I'm going to go ahead and add some clay similar to the top, similar to how I did at the bottom, to again just kind of make a smoother transition, really kind of complete the form a little bit. If I wanted to separate this with lines, then I might not need to do this. But since I want to blend this in totally, I think having a little extra clay up here at the top is going to help visualize that a little bit better. See right there, smooth, smooth, compress, compress. So sometimes it can be helpful to let these set aside if that handle's still a little bit too wet to clean up, but this one's just about to wrap up. And there we go. So I've got that pretty clean, and I can just go ahead and again let this sit under some plastic for a day or so, just to try and make sure it doesn't want to crack. Again, just a little nitpicking here, just cleaning up all those spots.